Hello, and thank you for joining today's webinar. The Panduit FlexCore ODF system can manage up to 3,168 fibers per frame, making it easy to create multiple configurations using just 3 modular building blocks. This flexibility allows for design customization and scalability while optimizing both product availability and system density. Compared to typical data center cabinets, FlexCore ODF can reduce floor space in a data center by 50%. In addition, with side panels and doors with locks, the FlexCore ODF solution allows the system to be completely enclosed and secure. This webinar explores how Panduit's FlexCore ODF system can manage, protect, and showcase a network investment. I am Kelly Donnelly, the Channel Marketing Manager at Panduit, and I will be facilitating this webinar. Just a little housekeeping before we begin. This webinar is being recorded. It will be available on demand soon after we complete today's webinar, and registrants will receive an email when it becomes available. All lines will be muted during the webinar. Following the webinar, there will be a Q&A session. Please feel free to submit your questions utilizing the chat box on the GoToWebinar app. We will answer as many questions as possible today. Today's presenter is Stephen Morris. Stephen is a Senior Product Manager for Panduit's Data Center Connectivity Solutions. Ensuring commercial success and managing product life cycle, Stephen's responsibilities include data center market research, identifying technology trends, and working with industry experts, customers, consultants, and partners to drive Panduit's new product roadmap forward. Stephen has over 30 years experience in the communications industry and is a subject matter expert in physical layer network connectivity solutions. Stephen graduated with higher level diplomas in mechanical and manufacturing engineering and holds 7 patents. Stephen, I will hand the call over to you now.
Welcome everyone. It's my absolute pleasure to introduce you to Panduit's new FlexCore optical distribution system, abbreviated as ODF. Most people will recognize it as that. So as Kay said, there will be time for questions at the end here. So really look forward to your engagement. I'm really excited to preview this new system with you all today. And I'll just turn my camera off for a moment so we can focus on the presentation. So essentially, an ODF is an important part of the network. And it's important to us all today because it's going to help drive our businesses forward commercially. So to complete tender processes in data centers and for completeness, we need a very strong ODF offering today. Or prior to today, we've been able to offer a range of Panduit products, but there's been a gap and an opening for an even better solution for certain application areas of the data center that we'll discuss later on through the presentation. Typically, when we talk about these applications, when we look at the ODF, it's going to pull through other Panduit systems and solutions. So first of all, these projects can range from very small to maybe $100,000 right through to multi-million dollars for the wider mix and for bigger data centers. If you look at multi-tenant data centers, Equinix and Digital Reality, they have an estate of over 500 data centers, so the opportunity is very large. The market opportunity for ODF is kind of forecast to be 1.2 billion. So just 1% of that in terms of product is roughly $12 million per year. So there's a great commercial opportunity, and with this new system, we're going to solve customers' challenges in a new and unique way. So it's a great opportunity for customers to have a superior product, and a fantastic opportunity for Panduit and partners to grow our businesses. So where does ODF fit? The data center can often be defined as grey space and white space, and I'll explain what these are in just a moment. And obviously there's different types of data centers. There's hyperscale and cloud, traditional kind of multi-tenant data centers of various sizes. Still a big market for on-premise DC, and outside of the kind of core data center market, there's also opportunities for optical distribution frames and quite large opportunities in the kind of telco and operator environment. It's got a big play. There's an interplay with all these areas and edge and head end, central office, etc. So when we define the white space, the grey space is really the build and entry point of a data center. It can also be a meet me room. It could be a main distribution area, or it could be an intermediate distribution area. And in these spaces, sometimes space can be very confined. Often it's not kind of greenfield. It's kind of, the market's typically split 50-50. But essentially, there's an opportunity to manage fiber better in these areas. Likewise, we have products today. HD Flex is a great example. It fits very well into the white space, more in the kind of caged area of a multi-tenant data center, for instance. You find 19-inch racks and cabinets, and HD Flex is a fantastic product to manage in any one of these areas. In particular, it works very well in the kind of a white space environment. So the ODF that we're going to discuss today isn't there to replace all the other Panduit products. It's there as a complementary system to really solve some particular issues in the grey space, but its application is very wide across the data center. So obviously, when we develop a product, we engage with customers to really understand their pain points, and ultimately networks are getting much faster. In the last 2 years alone, we've seen networks move from 100 gig Ethernet to 400 gig Ethernet. If we look back a decade, we've gone from kind of 10 gigabit Ethernet. The next 5 years, we're really kind of looking towards a future of 1.6 terabits. So essentially, these pipes that we're putting light down are carrying ever increasing bandwidths, and it's important to protect those and mitigate risk in the network. Your customers' number one pain point was manageability. They're doing many moves, adds and changes a week. Architecture's changing from maybe 3-tier switching to 2-tier spine and leaf. This is creating a much greater aggregate of fiber. Main distribution areas in medium to large size multi-tenant data centers can house over 20,000 fibers or more, often more. And essentially, when we look at the spend on cable and infrastructure, is typically just 4% of budget. So there's a real opportunity to look at solving the concerns of manageability in a better way. So we have this new system, FlexCore ODF, and we've invested a huge amount of time to make the system very, very intuitive in terms of how it manages cables. On the left-hand side here, you can see what we call ingress cabling. So we're looking at managing the many different types of fiber cable. It could be ribbon cable, stranded cable, and pre-terminated cables on either the left or right-hand side of this system. And the system's a total front access solution. In metric, it's 300 millimeters deep. And by total front access, we mean that all moves, adds and changes and the primary installation of the system can be done from the front of the rack. There's no need to access the side or the rear of the rack to install or scale the system. And again, you'll see maybe in some different photographs that this is a ray shadow product. When we say 300 millimeters deep, that's just shy of 1 foot. So the system's designed to be super intuitive in terms of patching. There are multiple ODF systems on the market today. Panduit's ODF system is superior in terms of density. When we look at 24 fiber-based cassettes, typically we're between 10 and 30% more dense than competitors on a like-for-like density cassette. And essentially, the biggest pain point from customers was manageability. And often, even if ODFs are promoting intuitive routing paths, are they really intuitive? The feedback we had was that the rules were always being broken and people weren't following the routing paths. Some competitors have very complex routing paths where they've got apps or software to tell you how to route patch cords. You maybe have to use 3 or 4 different length patch cords to patch between any 2 points on a frame. So the frame in front of us at the moment is a double frame. There's a left-hand and right-hand side to the frame, and we're patching in between. We've got a 150 millimeter vertical cable manager, 2 600 mil frames. In the middle, there's 2 300 mil vertical cable managers, and we go through frame configurations in just a moment. But what we're seeing here is a very intuitive cabling system. We haven't just looked at the rack we haven't just looked at the panel, and we've looked at solving cable management challenges. You know, in data centers, you've got higher density. This isn't just about cramming more density into the rack. It's really about managing an end-to-end fiber system. So we've developed new breakout solutions to complement the ODF system and to manage both field and factory terminated fiber. In the middle of the system, we've consolidated the patch cord length, and you can have a consolidated length patch cord whether you use a single frame, a double frame as we see here, or this frame can be put back to back. And in any of those scenarios, you can always use a 4-meter patch cord to patch between any 2 points on the frame. So essentially, there's stock coding for customers, and I'll explain the routing concept on following slides as well. So again, when you think about ODF systems, everyone likes an acronym. We've created a new one called PASS test. Okay, so first of all, P, pathways. You know, are they clearly defined? If they're not, customers going to end up in rip and replace scenarios. So with best intentions, you know, the paths maybe seem defined, but people don't follow the rules. And then in 1 to 2 years, there's rip and replace. So there's unplanned capex expenditure. And this is the real life of managing ODFs throughout their life cycle. So it's really important to consider how intuitive the routing paths are. Agile, can patch cords be easily traced? And are those lengths consolidated? Security, you know, are things physically protected and can they be locked away? Are there different security levels? And scalable, you know, can customers really scale? A lot of people talk about scalability, but you know, there are lots of nuances of optical distribution systems that have to be considered to enable that system to scale. So we've looked very, very closely at not just creating a high density optical distribution frame system, we've created one that is truly manageable and scalable. So always remember the PASS test. First things first, again, I mentioned that FlexCore is not a replacement for other Panduit fiber products, it's complementary. And you might notice that when you first look at the system, it appears half as dense as HD Flex. If you consider a 4RU panel for HD Flex versus FlexCore, the actual port count is half for FlexCore. Okay, so in a 4RU enclosure, you can get 12 trays, which is 288 fibers. The equivalent HD Flex system would manage double the amount of fibers, but because you can arrange the frames, because they're shallow in depth in particular arrangements, and we'll move on to that in just a moment, and we can get actually double the density in certain frame arrangements compared to HD Flex. So yeah, FlexCore is both less dense and more dense than HD Flex. Now you have to really think about how you configure the system across floor tiles to kind of look at density objectives. The great thing about FlexCore that you can't do with HD Flex, you can put a frame against the back of a wall. You know, many cases in meeting rooms or build and entry, there can be confined spaces and pathways, you know, physical pathways for people to walk across that have to be a certain width, and it really frees up design constraints you may have when you consider the options for designing these different application areas within a data center. So huge amount of flexibility. It could be half as dense, it could be double as dense as existing systems. In terms of cassettes, we will offer an LC 24 fiber splice cassette. You can see at the rear of the cassette, there's no connectivity. Everything happens at the front. The 24 fiber splice cassette has ingress and egress points for cabling left and right, and it's ambidextrous, so cables can be brought in on the left hand side or the right hand side. There's no need to order a left or right hand cassette. Similar to above, we have a through splice panel, so there's no connectors presented at the front on this panel. It's really just for cable to cable splice. We can offer a 24 fiber LC to MPO cassette in all the usual flavors, single mode and multi-mode. Here we're showing a right-hand version, and because all of the connectivity once again is presented at the front of the cassette, not at the rear at all, there will be a left and a right-hand version of this cassette, and for high-powered laser applications, the MPO will be shuttered, as will the LC connectivity. To complete the launch offering, and there will be a continued roadmap for FlexCore, we have a 24 fiber tethered cassette. So this is a great system. It's a very robust design and patented design in terms of its cable strain relief. The cables are small diameter trunk style cables, so they're the same cable that we use for trunk, MPO to MPO trunks. And it's a fantastic cable because it kind of optimizes pathway space being small diameter. So to complete the offering, we have these tethered cassettes. We mentioned intuitive routing paths. There's also another feature with FlexCore, and that's security. So the frame doors can be locked, as can the enclosure doors. So we can remove and insert on the front of the enclosure and add locks. And this is an optional extra today. In terms of intuitive routing, again, the feedback from customers were that people weren't following the routing rules. It wasn't intuitive. So what we've done is we've designed and developed a 3-factor identification system. So there'll be enclosure positions that relate to spool positions. You manage from the enclosure position to the corresponding spool position, and you do the same as you patch, for instance, on a cross connect. The spool itself has a shape, has a color, has a number, and that's shape, color, and number is replicated on the panel. So we try to make it really hard to ignore that there's a relationship here. So this is as intuitive as you really could make things. So essentially, moves as and changes are faster, and we talked about consolidated cords, and of course, avoiding rip and replace scenarios. So this is really the best system on the market today in terms of intuitive routing paths. This is just a schematic of a single and double frame and how cords are managed between frame positions. You can just see schematically, we've got number 1 going to number 1 and number 6 going to number 6 enclosure on the double cross connect here. We're living in a world where taking complexity out is a positive experience for the customer and partners in deploying systems. As a data center manager, you may have a wider estate and different application areas. So the great thing about FlexCore is that we can, just with 3 building blocks, build many different frame configurations. So there's a 600 mil wide frame you can see here highlighted in blue. And if I just move the animation forward, you can see that this blue frame is used in all these configurations. Again, the third part is the 300 mil wide vertical cable manager. And again, you'll see these used across these multiple configurations that can be used in different application areas. And the design could be further extended. There can be back-to-back designs and much longer lineups of the ODF as well. And to complete the kind of 3 modular building blocks, it's the 150mm VCM as well. So just with these 3 primary components, we've got a huge amount of flexibility to design and develop a frame with a cohesive fiber management approach across the data center estate. So it's a real problem solver. You've got the same system and the same working practices across multiple application areas, which is a real bonus for customers. I'm not going to go into all these numbers here on densities or reference slide. Just suffice to say that when we look at 24 fibers per cassette as a benchmark, we compare very favorably against competition, with typically between 10 and 30% more fiber dense. In some scenarios, you can increase the density to 11th enclosure position. As you complete one of these longer lineups, you will have to sacrifice the enclosure position to pass patch cords along a lower trough. Again, Panduit is offering a FlexCore system, but it can be used with a wider range of Panduit products, PanMPO, LC Uniboot, Fiber Runner, and more. The great thing about the ODF system is that it can be fully enclosed, so this gives you security. Many customers we discussed the system with were telling us that doors are great, but everyone's ODF doors gets in the way of doing moves and changes. They often remove the doors when there's no customers there, and then they carry on doing moves and changes, and maybe pop the doors back on if someone's visiting. But the great thing about Panduit's system that's unique in the market is that we can lock just the ingress cabling or egress cabling away. So when you do a moves, adds, or change, you can do that by just opening the 600mm wide door, as you can see in the middle of this diagram here. So we've added a bit more kind of security and physical protection compared to competition as well. So we mentioned the space saving. I'm going to try and go a little quicker just to wrap up and save some time for questions here. So a traditional high density system such as HD Flex would require racks that require depth. That depth can vary. It's going to require some kind of vertical management. So when we look at managing many fibers in a main cross connect, for instance, you can end up in a scenario like this. So in this scenario, we've got 4 racks, and we're looking at managing 10 4RU HD Flex enclosures per rack. That's going to take up 12 floor tiles, and that will give us 23,000 fibers. If we repeat this for ODF, first things first, we could place an ODF against the back of a wall. We could also place, and of course it's forefront access, could place an ODF in the middle of the floor or elsewhere across the floor tiles. So this is a plan view, by the way. So we've got a 300mm VCM in the middle, and we've got a double frame arrangement next to the 300mm VCM, and we just step and repeat that. So we've got a double frame back to back, and then we mirror it on the opposite side. So in this scenario, we're managing the same amount of fibers on 45, or actually 46% less space. So it's 6.5 floor tiles. In fact, this 300mm VCM is optional. It gives you consolidated lengths between these double frames. If we were to remove this as an optional frame, we would be half the space compared to a high density system. So again, just reflecting back on the fact that FlexCore can be half the space, or it could be not as dense as high density system. It really does depend on how you kind of arrange frames. So staying flexible, the trays in HD Flex can be moved, allowing us to use any front facing HD Flex, any front connectivity facing HD Flex cassette. We can use a skinny cassette, a double wide cassette, or the regular form factors. This allows us to use splitters in this system, and also some of the tap offering as well, where all the connectivity is front facing. So superb flexibility. Again, competitors on the market wouldn't offer this much flexibility in their traditional ODF systems. So the data center and ODF design can be a dynamic space to operate in, and FlexCore is called FlexCore for a reason. It offers a huge amount of flexibility in both the cabling offering and the way to break out cables, but importantly, or equally as importantly, the spool system can be adjusted and moved. So as you grow and scale your network, day 1 you may be managing between frames, but day 2 you may want to kind of manage outside of the frame and across the data center. So within the design of the product, we offer the flexibility to adjust spools on the fly. So it's a great system. I forgot to mention that it's actually Zone 3 seismic rated. It's got advanced security, it's modular and scalable, high density, managed density, and you can use it with a wider range of Panduit products. Importantly, hopefully you've all heard of Rapid ID, a recent launch as well, and it's fully compatible with this new labeling record keeping system. So I think I've wrapped up just about on time, which is quite amazing for me. Just wanted to summarize by saying that we're looking to our partners to help us succeed in the market with ODF. It will be a success. It's more scalable, more modular and flexible, more secure, and more manageable. And with that, I'll open it up to any questions you may have.
Okay, thank you, Stephen. We will use this time to answer any questions, so feel free to submit your questions utilizing the chat box on the GoToWebinar app. We will answer as many questions as possible today in the time allotted. Okay, it looks like the first question, Stephen, can I use FlexCore enclosures in standards 2 or 4 post racks?
Sure. Okay. The answer is that it's a 19-inch mounted system. It's possible. We'd recommend really that you kind of design ODF as a full system, and where you have 19-inch racks and cabinets, we would recommend an alternative Panduit system where possible. But yeah, there is scope to use it in regular 19-inch racks as well.
Okay, another question that came through, any plans for CS connectors?
Okay, yeah. So CS connectors are very interesting. Panduit was one of the first manufacturers to market with that form factor connector in HD Flex cassettes. We see opportunities for CS as more of a switch type application. Therefore, it probably resides more in a white space. If there are opportunities for CS with ODF, we would be very happy to explore market opportunities, but for now, we consider it a little more niche and a switch application.
I'm sorry, Stephen, you were breaking up. Can you repeat that answer?
Yes, of course. So we see the CS connector as more of a niche kind of switch type application need. So for ODF, it's more grey space. So we believe that there's other products such as HD Flex which are more adapt to suiting CS applications. So if you do have a CS requirement, I would look at HD Flex first. If you feel there's a real need for ODF, please pick up the phone, contact your Panduit sales representative, and we'd be very happy to look at that requirement as well. But today, it's not currently part of the ODF offering.